Bear with me. There we go. Sorted. Right. So Leslie and Liz will keep letting people in, and I can concentrate on talking. But I want to go back because we're on John's slide. Apologies for the slow start there. We're going the wrong way. How can slides go backwards? There we go. Finished. There you go, everyone. Go and apply. Right, let's start that again. Slideshow. I've never seen that. Right, we won't be going backwards through any of this. Okay, so it's a year almost to the week. We launched the first one. First round was really, really popular. We had well over 100 people at the application launch video like this. Lots and lots of people then submitted their applications. Only around 30% were able to be funded. We had that many applications in. So it's really important that you listen to everything we talk about today, and that if you're keen on applying, that you make sure you do the right things and you sell your business and your project in the best way possible. This opportunity is open to everyone. This is why this image, is so broad. We've got everything from the walking tour in the middle to Blenheim Palace, to events, to food, to hotels, to B&Bs, to shops. The eligibility is quite broad, but you've got to make sure that your business and your project stands out if you want to succeed in this. So here's what we're going to cover today, some welcome and introductions, and I've done most of that. I'm going to very briefly give you one slide overview of the whole Visitor Economy Renaissance programme, in case that's not something you're aware of. And then I'll introduce John Hoy, who will talk about Oxfordshire as a destination. And John helped us to launch the first scheme, and he sat on the grant panel and helped to make the decision. So John has got a vast amount of knowledge around the visitor economy in Oxfordshire, and we're thrilled to have him supporting this grant scheme. I'll then go through the detail of the grant scheme, and I'll introduce the next steps, and then we'll cover any questions at the end. So the whole programme then. The Visitor Economy Renaissance Programme. You may hear people who are aware of this call it VERP. That's just our acronym for it. So it's a £1.64 million programme. It's been going now for over a year. And that causes some oddities in things. So if you remember, some of you may have forgotten, but we had a thing called a pandemic. At the pandemic, the government created a fund called the Contain Outbreak Management Fund. This Visitor Economy Renaissance Programme is funded from that money. So there's a lot of legacy requirements that you might think are slightly odd now around COVID. But this funding comes through and says that what we've got to do is we've got to use this money to make sure that COVID-19 doesn't come back and impact this sector. So we've done everything we can within the rules and restrictions to make it as open as possible, but COVID-19 is still a thread that flows through this. Ultimately, the scheme is designed to help Oxfordshire businesses remain competitive, be innovative, and be more resilient. So we want to bring more people into Oxfordshire. Those people in Oxfordshire, we want to encourage to spend more on visitor economy activities. From that, we want to create more jobs, protect jobs, and we want it to be all as sustainable as possible. And that sustainable as possible is important.
Hello.
If someone can
I'm sure somebody must have been in the lab because the lights weren't on and now they are on. So somebody must have been.
My colleagues is looking for that. Let's make sure those lights are working.
The lights have come on and they've gone in there. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, they definitely weren't on when I first came. They're on now. So.
Steve Burgess.
Steve Burgess.
Sorry, Anne, I think I've muted you by accident. You have to unmute.
There we go. That's excellent. Right. Well, at least we started that. Look, so even the most seasoned professionals can have challenges when they're delivering things. And we expect that in projects. There will be risks, there will be challenges. And the point I was just about to make is that net zero has made its place in this programme now. So as well as everything else you're doing, we're going to ask you about how you're going to be managing and reducing carbon in what you're doing. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to you, John. Hopefully we can manage the technology and not have a challenge, but please do talk about the visitor economy in Oxfordshire.
Thank you, and can I express my warm welcome to everybody on the call. It's brilliant to be part of the second round of the Visitor Economy Grant, or VEG, as it's lovingly known. and it's good that we've got 100 or so people engaged at this point. As you've already said, the interest in Veg 1, the first round, was phenomenally strong, and it was brilliant to support 36 business and award £660,000 out to businesses pretty much across the county. We had a really good spread across the districts, across the county, into the city. So we're looking again this time to get the same geographical spread as much as we want to get sector spread as well. But it's vital that we do support our industry. Oxfordshire's an incredibly great, strong destination, but like everywhere else, it's got its challenges and it's got its strains and pressures, and obviously COVID hasn't helped. If we look at the sector of tourism within Oxfordshire, it's worth about 2.5 billion based on 2019 prices, and it employs about 42,000 people. So it's a very big part of Oxfordshire's economy. Staying visitors account for around 12% of visits and about 48% of spend. So the flip of that is that day visitors are the balance, 88% of visits and 52% of spend. But it's interesting to look at overseas visitors because they could form part of some of the applications that we see. But overseas visitors account for only 4% of visits and 29% of spend. So they are very important to Oxfordshire in terms of what they spend, but clearly there's capacity to grow those numbers. And maybe there are some people on this workshop that will be able to focus around some of that area. But if we look at Oxfordshire and how we're currently performing, there's definitely room for improvement in some areas. If we look at international visits, we're doing reasonably well. We sit about 7th by comparison. We sit around 7th by comparison to other English destinations for holiday destination, around 10th for visiting friends and family, 8th for business, and 2nd for study. But if we look at domestic tourism, we fall way down to mid-table. We're only 32nd for holiday, 15th for visiting friends and family, and 21st for business. So there is a lot of areas where Oxfordshire can do better. And some of the grant applications hopefully will focus around some of those opportunities for how we can do better going forward. COVID had a huge impact across Oxfordshire to the tourism and visitor economy sector. We sank from 2.5 billion in 2019 to only just over 1 billion in 2020. So clearly decimated that sector. It's grown back in 2021 to about 1.6 billion, but still a long way to go to get back to that 2.5 billion figure from 2019. So these grants are aimed at recovery. They're aimed at pulling us back up to where we want to be, but we want to aspire to do much better than that. We want to grow this really vibrant sector. A couple of examples of grants that were awarded in the first round of the Visitor Economy Grant. One was to Wake Up to Woodstock, which many of you may know. They used their grant application to bring in expert travel and tourism consultancy services to strengthen and refine their website in order to make their impact out to the marketplace much stronger, in order to draw more people into Woodstock, both businesses, visitors, people staying overnight, tourists, etc. And that's proved to be already very successful. And some of the early stats that they're recording post having spent their grant are looking very strong. Another example would be Stoner Park over near Henley, which is a lovely traditional stately home country park which hosts events. They use the grant to expand their broadband network down through the park in order to give them better connectivity for their events in the park. And they did that obviously by ducting and piping and cabling, but they also quite creatively used recreated stones in order to house the kit through the park so that it wasn't looking like a sort of metal box. It looks like a stone, which is obviously very natural for the environment within Stoner Park. So it can fall into many different pockets. And as Ant has already said, I would stress the fact that this is a very broad sweep of opportunity across tourism, across culture, across arts, across leisure, across events, across hospitality, and even independent retail within the visitor economy sector. So there are lots and lots of strands of where this could apply and where this could actually bring benefit. So by wrapping up, I would just thank you for your interest and your engagement. This is a vitally important sector. Oxfordshire is the most desirable destination, but we can become even more desirable than we are now. And let's use these grant applications to really focus on where we can make a difference, where we can drive recovery, and where we can put Oxfordshire higher up those rankings and make it an even stronger destination going forward. So good luck. I look forward to seeing the applications as they come through, because I'll be on the panel again this time around. And we're excited to be putting this £250,000 into the sector where we know it will do good. That's all I was going to say, but I'll stay on the call for any questions at the end. But Ant, back to you.
That's fantastic, John. Thank you very much for wonderfully colouring in the visitor economy sector for us. So let me carry on then. So who can apply for the grant? As John has just said, as we've said, you know, as long as you're in the visitor economy, you're probably going to be eligible. You need to make sure that your primary function is in one of those following sectors, however, but they're really broad, really broad. If you look at the guidance that's on the webpage that we'll share with you in a bit, it just breaks them out into a bit more detail. But you've got to be based in trading in Oxfordshire, in the visitor economy, in one of those primary functions. Oh, okay. There is a downside, though. There is a downside. My apologies here for anyone that's going to leave the call now. We've got 70 at the minute. Let's see what's left after this slide. So businesses who received funding through the first round cannot reapply. Now, if you applied, but you were unsuccessful, that's fine. Please do reapply. We'd love to see you, you know, build on the previous project that you put in, make it bigger, give it more chance of success. I'll come with something new. But if you manage to get money from the first round of the Visitor Economy Grant Scheme, you cannot reapply. We will also be giving preference to businesses that have not yet benefited from any OxLEP grant. Now that's, listen to the wording there carefully, we'll be giving preference to. So we're not saying don't apply. Please do apply. If the funding allows, then your application will be considered. But if we get a lot of applications from businesses that have had no grant from OxLEP in the past, then they'll get preference. I expect we may come back to this with some questions. Okay, key points then are from the grant. The grants are between £10,000 and £15,000. You have to be able to cash flow your grant. If you haven't experienced an OxLEP grant before or something similar, then you'll apply for the grant. You'll be given the fantastic news that you've been awarded the grant. Please go ahead with your project. You'll need to deliver your project and pay for it yourself. And then at the end, you claim the money back. So if you can't cash flow your grant, it's unlikely that it's worth you applying. The grant can cover capital and revenue costs, but not salaries. So you can't pay for your own staff. You can't pay for yourself if you're a director in the business, but you can cover other capital or revenue costs. If you've got questions about capital or revenue, we can answer them at a high level, but it's also a conversation for you and your accountant. You are not expected to contribute co-investment to the project. You don't have to co-fund this, match fund it, whatever the language is that you want to use. However, you know, if you've got a £25,000 project and you can put £10,000 in, please do go ahead. You can apply. You cannot, however, spend more than £24,999 with one supplier. So if your application is for a project, you're applying for a grant for part of a bigger project, then you cannot have one supplier that's going to get more than £24,999. Businesses must be viable. So we're going to ask you in your application, is everything okay? You know, if you're really struggling financially, then you won't be eligible. And you've also not got to have had more than £335,000 worth of support before. That's the minimal financial assistance stuff. Used to be called state aid. Again, highly unlikely you'll have had that, but if you have, just tell us. And then the overall timeline, you've got to spend and claim the money by the 14th of June 2024. So it's no good thinking about how this grant can help you with a festival in August next year. And if you are successful, then we've got some requirements. We expect every successful grant recipient to engage with 2 hours of support from a business advisor. Now, that could be about your specific project that the grant is linked to, or it could be about wider aspects of developing your business. But we want to get as much value for you as a grant applicant, as a grant recipient. So we're insisting that you engage with 2 hours of business support as well. And there'll be plenty of people in the chat who've engaged with lots of business support. So some nods would be great to say, hey, that's good value. You should do that anyway. You'll need to provide all the evidence required so that we can check that you've delivered your project and that we can make sure that everything's legit, and then we can pay the claim. So you'll be responsible for all the evidence. We also will require you to proactively promote and publicise the support you've had. And lots of the Veg 1 grant applicants have already done that. Some of them aren't ready to yet, but it's brilliant to see those success stories pop up in the news and on websites and on social media. And then there's always a long-term requirement. We never know when we'll have to do evaluation activities, when there might be an audit. So you'll need to be prepared to open your doors and talk to whoever comes and asks you about your grant in the future. So what sort of projects are we looking for? Well, John has mentioned a few of the successful projects from Veg 1 already, but I really want to say that we want to be very broad. The sorts of themes that we had before, we had successful grants linked to outside events. We had successful grants linked to upgrading kitchens to allow expansion, refurbishment type activities. We had things around developing the retail side of a business. We had new equipment. We had new guided tours. So it wouldn't be right to say this is the sort of project that's the most likely to succeed, because we are looking for really broad stuff. The sorts of things that are eligible on page 6 and 7 of the guidance, when you look at it, describes this in more detail, but equipment and technology, new software that you can link into outcomes, new products or experience linked to your destination, anything you can do that links with COVID-19, confidence as well. It's still there. Still regularly see people walking around with masks on. Renovations and refurbishments, we encourage that as long as they're not so big that they're going to require planning permission. We will not support anything that's going to have to get planning permission, because we can't risk that your project fails because you don't get that permission. Ineligible costs, there's a longer list here, as you can imagine, and page 7 and 8 of the guidance goes through these. There is one area I'm just going to highlight. So we've got vehicles as number 2 there. There's a current live debate, and we will clarify that. In scheme 1, we wouldn't support any vehicles. However, we do feel that if your business, for instance, the obvious one is electric bikes. If you're in an electric bike tour business, then we may consider funding some electric bikes. But at the moment, that's a live debate, and we will clarify that with you. We won't support any projects that have already started. So you need to come up with a project that will help your business, that you can start and deliver within the designated time window that starts in October and finishes by June next year. We won't fund working capital. Our definition of working capital is quite broad, but we won't pay your rent on your premises. Your business should be doing those sorts of things. We won't fund wages or salary costs. We have had projects where they were planning on bringing in contractors, and then a few weeks in, they said, hey, we've managed to recruit someone who can do this for ourselves. Instantly, the project's no longer eligible. We can't pay the salary for your staff. You will have read ahead, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but VAT is one challenge that comes up. When you're filling in the application form, when you're talking about your costs, you need to describe the VAT, but if you're going to reclaim that VAT from HMRC because you're a VAT registered business, then we won't pay you the VAT. We'll pay you the project cost without the VAT. You'll claim the VAT back from HMRC. If you're small enough not to be VAT registered, then we will pay it for you because you won't get it back. So hopefully you've read ahead there and you can ask any questions shortly. Timescales. Online pre-qualification. We're calling it qualification, but registration, whatever you want to call it, it opens today. It's probably open right now, but if not, it will be open within the next hour. So by 10 a.m. on the website I'm going to give you, the pre-registration form is there. It will close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. However, in order to manage the volume, we will only go through the first £700,000 worth of application initially. So there is a little bit of fastest finger first here. So it's great that you're here today. If you're in the over £700,000 part of that list, then we'll keep you on a waiting list and you may still be invited to apply. But this pre-registration is just your business information and a few words about your project. You don't need to put in full costings. You don't need to put in the quotes. All of those things come at the full application stage. So it shouldn't take you more than 15, 20 minutes to do this pre-registration, pre-qualification stage. If you're in that first £700,000, when you've filled in the pre-registration, we'll do some basic checks to make sure you are an Oxfordshire business, you're in the right sector, etc. You'll then be emailed a link to a pre-recorded webinar. It's 15 minutes and 30 seconds about how to complete the application form. Now, some of you may be seasoned professionals and it could be the most boring 15 minutes and 30 seconds of your life. However, believe me, we had some terrible application forms last year. And we really don't want your project to come across badly. So there's a short video webinar for you to watch. We can see when you've watched it. We can see if you've watched it. So it's tracked. So we need to see that all 15 minutes and 30 seconds have been watched by the person that registered. And then we will send you the application form. And we've tried to simplify it. So the application form is a Word document. You'll be able to type it in, you'll be able to save it, you'll be able to keep your own copy, you'll be able to delete it and start again, whatever you want. It's a Word document. And then you'll submit that application form back to us by the final deadline. And I've jumped ahead a little bit. The final deadline is the 14th of September. So you've got pre-registration as soon as possible between now and the 30th of August. Full application will be once you've watched the webinar. So as soon as you've watched that webinar, we'll send you the application form within 24 hours. And then you've got until the 14th of September. Now, there's no fastest finger first there. So you've got a good 2-3 weeks to get your application done. Make sure you've got everything that you need to support the application and to get it submitted. Those applications will then be assessed and go through our internal processes. The grant panel will then meet on the 5th of October, and successful applicants, those grants that are supported, will be informed in the week commencing the 9th of October. So you'll get an email from Leslie or Liz or Vic that says, congratulations, the grant panel have approved your project. We're absolutely thrilled. In order for us to develop your grant offer letter, we need to make sure that you're connecting with the business support that's in parallel to this. So you'll then need to have a one-to-one with a business advisor. You know, you could talk about your project. We won't ask you to change it. The business advisor won't be able to approve it. You've already been approved. So you'll have a one-to-one with a business advisor. You might talk about, okay, how could I do this even better? How could I get more bang for my grant? How could I get bigger outputs and bigger outcomes? Get that support. As soon as you've had that one-to-one, we'll send you your grant offer letter and you can start spending money. The grant offer letter is a contract between OxLEP and your business. We then want you to get on and deliver that project. Final claim deadline is the 14th of June, 2024. So you need to have finished your project, done your paperwork, submitted your claim by the 14th of June, 2024. That is an absolute hard line. We've had to work really hard with the funding body. Remember, this money comes from COVID. We've had to work really hard to get it extended to that. It should have been the 31st of March. But we felt that it was right to give longer timeline. And then we would expect you to complete a case study on your project by September next year. We want to be able to shout about your project. We want to help promote it. And hopefully that would be in your interest too. So the next steps. This is where we see lots of people run off to the website. So the website, the web link is exactly the same as last year. So if you applied last year, you'll find it in the same place. If you search for Visitor Economy Grant Oxfordshire, you'll find the page. It's on the oxlepbusiness.co.uk webpage, Visitor Economy Grants. If you find the main page, you'll be able to navigate through it, through to it. So on there, you'll find the guidance. You should find the pre-registration link for you to go in and pre-register. And you'll also find the frequently asked questions. Now, before you fill in your full application, do make sure you've read that guidance, watched that webinar, and read those frequently asked questions. It would be silly to miss your opportunity because you hadn't spent half an hour reading the guidance. We would also encourage you that if you haven't in the last few months filled in the business support tool, that you scan that QR code there go to the business support tool and engage with the OxLEP business support as well. As I've said, it is mandatory if you are awarded a grant for you to have 2 hours of one-to-one at least. But whether you want to get started with that now or wait is fine. If you decide not to apply for a grant, then the business support is still there for you. We have a lot of business support. Please do engage with it. Let us help you grow your business. Ultimately, we're funded by government to help you grow your business and pay more taxes. It's in everyone's interest. So that is it from me with the slides. I'm going to finish here and open up for questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hopefully be able to end the slideshow as well. There we go. Right, so I should be able to see everybody.
We haven't had too many questions in the chat, but we do need some clarity around who can apply, who can't apply, and the preference that's going to be given to people that haven't received funding.
Okay, so there's a plethora of grant schemes that OxLEP have had in the last 5 years. If you successfully had a grant from the Escalate program, from ISFB, if you had a Kickstart grant, we're not, I think I'm right in saying we're not talking about the COVID business resilience grants that were in 2020. Those were a different ilk of grants. They were to help businesses just to survive. So if you had one of those, you're still eligible. But any of the other grant schemes, if your business had one of those, then that business is not going to be considered. Sorry, that business will be on the sort of reserve list of being considered if there aren't enough non-previous beneficiaries. I'm not sure whether I explained it any better the second time.
The schemes are listed in the guidance, so you can look at the guidance and see which ones.
Any other questions in the chat, Liz?
Yeah, are you disadvantaged if you applied last year and were unsuccessful, but your grant this year doesn't really differ?
No disadvantage whatsoever, and there is an absolute chance that, you know, the scheme might be less competitive. There might be less brilliant applications this year. But I think if that was me, I'd be thinking, okay, what do I think I could have done better last year? How could I have made this stronger? Because if the playing field is as competitive, then you'll want your application to have a stronger chance of success. So it might be that you could share your last year's application with a friend, a colleague, somebody who you think could actually go through it and say, well, actually, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?
Thanks, Sam. What's the definition of a viable business?
It's one that we take away, but let me just give you a sort of throwaway if you never quote it back to me. So what we don't want is to give government support funding to a business that is likely to go bust in the next 6 months. So, you know, we don't, it's horrible language, but we don't want to be pouring good money after bad. We don't want to be this not to deliver outcomes for Oxfordshire for your business. That's really, really difficult because obviously you'll be saying, well, my business is going to succeed and it is going to survive. And if I just get this £10,000 grant, things will get better. So it is not black and white. In the guidance, it says you must be a viable business or, and here's your caveat, have a plan for returning to viability. So if you think your business is struggling, please do have a chat with us because we'd love to work with you and develop that plan for returning to viability. So we're not saying it's a no. We're saying have some advice from a business advisor. They'll help you work through how you can think about getting more customers, because that's what every business wants, more customers, and then apply for the grant anyway.
Thanks, Sam. If planning permission is already granted, is that okay? This is covered in the guidance document, and I can't open it because I'm recording, but I'm pretty sure that we don't support projects, even if planning permission is granted, just due to the timescales around things like building control and the regulations around that. So I think that is a hard no, but please check the guidance document with the link that's in the slides.
Great. I see a question there. Is it okay for a registered charity to apply? Absolutely. My apologies, just for brevity, the language we use is business. But what we mean is any sole trader, any limited company, any charity, any social enterprise, any community interest company. as long as you are trading, you're not public sector funded, and you are less than 249 staff and a turnover of less than 50 million, i.e. an SME, a small and medium-sized enterprise, then yes, you're eligible.
Lots of people asking for the pre-qualification link. We will email it at the end of the call round to everybody that's on the call. Can a business apply if they've recently started? I've only been open for 30 days.
I'm not sure. I think the answer's got to be yes, because I
Yes.
don't think there's anything in the guidance that says you can't.
Yeah.
But it'll be up to you to describe how your business is going to really make good use of this grant money in a project. Sell yourself. You could have the next big thing, so we don't want to say no. Everybody started somewhere.
Yeah, there's lots of questions coming in, and we will have to take some of them offline and answer them afterwards. Somebody's asked whether, I'm not sure if I understand the question fully, are we able to ask for a grant for several types of project? Someone's asked a similar question further up about, can they apply for 2 projects, a 15 grand grant for 2 projects?
There is absolutely no chance in this world, in my view, that one company will get 2 grants. So I would say, if you want to put in 2 applications, and there's nothing in the guidance that says you can't, but you will only succeed with 1. So it's absolutely essential that you make sure they're not in any way interconnected, because that would make both of them fail. And we are talking about a project, the language is used quite loosely and liberally throughout this, but we want to know that what the activities that you do come together to make greater than the sum of the parts. So if you can describe the activities in a way that is a project, and by doing this, this, and this, it will give outputs and outcomes Y, that's fine. So that could be investment in additional outdoor space and some website improvements. 2 quite different things, but they're part of a similar project connected to grow the business. I guess the question that I've just started to link to that hasn't necessarily been answered, but I encourage partnerships at the start. I encourage collaboration. So you can collaborate with others. What you will require is 1 lead business. So 1 business will make the application and will describe how it's going to be delivered in partnership. However, the lead business has to spend all the money. So they can't then distribute it through the other partners and they all spend a little bit. So, it could be business A is going to deliver a project around stuff, and businesses B, C, and D are going to be part of it. They're going to benefit from it, and they'll probably put some time and effort into it, but they won't get the money. Right, we've got that one covered.
Does it apply to a project which would require alcohol premises license applications as part of the project?
It's one we'll have to take away, but the answer is probably yes. What we're concerned about is providing funding to a project that requires things outside of your control and our control to happen. So getting a premises license, there's all sorts of factors that could go wrong there. I can see. Do you need a rough ballpark figure at the pre-application stage? Yes, but rough and ballpark are the terms there. So come up with a number between 10 and 15,000, because we ask you how much you're expecting to spend. If you say 10,000 at pre-application and then at full application you come back and say, well, actually it's 13,950, that's fine. Link for the pre-registration. So if it isn't already on the website, there's always a delay between us saying this is going live, because we don't want it out too soon, and it actually appearing on the website. So we will share it, as Liz has said, straight after the call. Anything we've missed?
There's quite a few questions just around applications with 2 distinct parts, things like that. I think it's just, you can have multiple parts, multiple stages to your project, but ultimately it's 1 project that you need to put the application in for. it can have different stages and it can be part of a series of events, but it's got to be one project.
Yeah. And as I say, if there's questions that you haven't thought of today, or that come up afterwards, or that we haven't answered, then I'm being told there's one here. What have we got?
So can you apply for a grant for a new business if you have already had a grant, please? It is a totally new business.
Okay, right. So if it's a totally new business, then it's a totally new business. So if you've been running a walking tour, and then you've decided to close the walking tour business down and you've opened a pub, then we'll be looking at the business, not the director in that circumstance. If you're a sole trader, then just describe to us why it's different. Our festival is mainly funded by the Arts Council and our 9 in-kind partner venues, but we'd like help to develop our organisation. Would we be able to apply? That's obviously, it's just a quick question there, Emma, but if you can describe how your project is going to benefit and deliver the outputs and outcomes, then yes, there's nothing in there that says you can. We have, if you are a public funded organisation or you're delivering a public funded event, then we might have some extra questions just to make sure that you really are an SME and we're not double counting this money. We will not fund something that you're getting paid for from someone else. The one thing, nobody's asked how much money we've got, and really we didn't put it in the slides because we're trying to get as much as possible. So I don't want to say we don't know. What we're saying is we're trying to get as much as possible, and at the moment, what we do know is it's at least £250,000. But that's only a small drop in the ocean compared to the £660,000 that John mentioned we had this time last year. So there isn't as much money, but I can guarantee one way not to get a grant is not to apply. So if you want to have a chance, you need to apply. Lots of thank yous.
Yeah, I can't see any other questions. I think there may have been some very start of the call. We will go through the whole transcript and make sure that everyone that's asked a question is answered too. Someone's just asked if they can apply if they haven't opened the company.
No, you'll need to have evidence that this business exists in some way, shape or form, because one of the first tests that we do, it's called due diligence, but we'll look you up. So you don't try to describe your business trading in Oxford if actually you're based in Marlow. We will check.
There's another question here we might have to take offline, but if collaborating with another business, are the same rules applicable to the other entity receiving previous grants? I think that if you're the lead applicant, then that's fine. And your business is the business receiving the money, then it doesn't matter if the other entity has received a grant from OxLEP.
Yeah, because in a partnership project, there will be one lead business receiving the money, spending the money, reporting on it. You'll be accountable as the lead business. Other businesses may benefit from it and they'll be partners. And it's great to have that collaboration and for them to be supporting you. But ultimately, we'll do the due diligence on you as the lead business. Okay, right. Well, we'll probably wrap it up there then. It's coffee time. I hope that's been useful. I'm absolutely thrilled that there's so many people here with such an interest. We really want this money to have a big impact for you and your business and for the Oxfordshire visitor economy. So thank you very much. Any questions you've got, you'll all get an email, as I say. Leslie and Liz will do their best to answer those questions. Where they're really, really challenging, it might take us a little bit longer, but most of the questions we've had before and we'll be able to answer really quickly. So thank you very much. Good luck, everybody. And thanks again, John, for your support.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nat.